Hello, my name is Derek from Tomcat Gas Training, and the video you're about to watch is about this flue gas analyzer. So we're going to be looking at the safe use and the correct use of flue gas analyzers. Now, to understand your flue gas analyzer is incredibly important, and you must always read the manufacturer's instructions on how to use your analyzer, no matter what analyzer you're using. Also, we have BS 7967 2015 to aid us in the correct use of the analyzer. So in this video, what we're going to be doing is how to use them and how to understand the results we get. So, as usual, let's get on with it. So what I've got here is the standard probe for this Anton, and if you look at our other video, Anton versus Bluelyzer versus Kane, you'll see this in more detail, but basically I'm going to just clip this onto the back of the analyzer till I hear this click, and this is now connected. And then the K temperature probe I'm just going to put in just to keep it out of the way. Okay, so basically now the standard probe is connected. Now we'll talk about the bowls and we'll talk about the traps later, but basically I'm just going to turn it on. So if you've seen the video, you see this is pretty straightforward. Wait till it makes a bleep and then it should come on, and it's now telling me that the battery's charged. It's Tomcat's, it belongs to Tomcat, and it's now going through its load up sequence. Now it's onto the screen. Now I need to turn this on for flue gas analyzing. So it says test menu. Okay, I'm going to press the middle button to accept that. And it now says flue gas analyzer. It's now going to go through its purge sequence, so I'll move away from the mic so you don't hear it. And the probe is connected. Okay, so the bowl, the probe is connected. So basically now what it's doing is it's going through its purge sequence. So there's a little tick there because I'm saying it's in fresh air, so I need to tick it, and it's now going to go through its sampling. Need to see it, but I don't want it to be too noisy on the mic. It's now loading. Okay, it's now ready to use, and you can see it's actually saying our oxygen reading is 20.9, our CO is 0, our CO2 ratio and CO2 we've got nothing. Okay, because when I turned this off, I turned it off correctly. I made sure my oxygen reading was 20.9 and everything else was reading 0 before I turned the pump off. And that's the important part about turning it on and off. Okay, so always make sure when you turn it off, our reading for the oxygen has gone back to 20.9. Okay, now there is 20.9% oxygen in the atmosphere. Okay, so some of them will read 21 or 20.5. So that's also important to understand what the oxygen levels are for the analyzer. Okay, we require a reading of greater than 20.6 on our flue integrity testing, and again when we go through the tests we'll look at that. So turning it on, we need to make sure all our readings are 0 and our oxygen reading is reading at 20.9. okay, now we're just going to show you a little test now to make sure that our hose is correct and that we've got no air leakage whatsoever. So let's get on with that. Okay, so going to look at this little tip, what we can do just to prove that we've got no air leaks in our hose, gun, or in the trap, the bowl trap on the analyzer. So I'm just going to stick the analyzer on this boiler because of the magnets on the back. Now this is where we sample, so you could actually put a tight fitting tube on there and bend the tube over as long as you know it's tight fitting. But if it isn't tight fitting, another way you could do it is you can block off here and make sure you have to block the end off as well, and what we should get is an alarm. The pump should go and we should get an alarm from the analyzer to tell us we've got no airflow, okay? And that's going to prove you've got no leaks whatsoever in your pipe, your bowl, and the connection going to the analyzer. And you should always do this when you suspect that you're getting wrong or incorrect readings. So if I put my fingers over the end of there and block the end up, you can now see it's put a warning sign on the analyzer to show it says there's a blockage detected. Okay, just going to press escape and it's back working again. And that's proved to me that there is no air being drawn into this analyzer from a broken bowl, broken seals, or a broken probe. That's your first tip and your first test. Before we carry on, let's try and understand some of the readings what we might be getting from our analyzer. So when we analyze a boiler, we're looking at the CO and the CO2, which will give us a ratio. Okay, so the CO and CO2 ratio is basically the CO divided by the CO2 and then divided by 10,000. That's how it works out. So if we had a CO of 100, we would divide that and we had a CO2 of 9, it would give us a ratio of 0.0011111. Okay, now for a condensing boiler, from that result there, we're looking to see if it's less than 0.004, which we are. Okay, so that would deem that safe. If it's a non-condensing boiler, we would be looking for 0.008 and less. Okay, now if a boiler fails, so a fluid appliance fails its flue gas analyzer readings in the unsafe situations procedure, that is deemed at risk. But if a flueless appliance fails its flue gas analyzer readings, then it would be deemed immediately dangerous. Okay, so if we're looking at our readings for seeing if we've got a maximum or minimum, we've got a maximum CO reading of 350 parts per million. Now, all the very high efficient boilers will have very high CO readings at the beginning, because the more efficient the boiler is, the higher the CO readings are. But your analyzer doesn't want to go that high. Okay, your analyzer will give you a warning signal if you've probably gone over 200 ppm, parts per million. So what you've got to do is you've got to allow the boiler to run for at least 15 minutes before you start trying to do your sampling, because if you stick it in straight at the beginning, it'll go too high and your analyzer won't be able to take it and will turn off, or you could damage the analyzer. Our CO2 readings on average are between 8.2 and 10.2, but you must always read the manufacturer's instructions. But that is quite a high figure. Okay, so just remember, minimum time of 15 minutes. Now, a maximum time of 30 minutes as well. If you can't get a flue gas analyzer within readings within half an hour, you're never going to do it. Okay, so minimum of 15, maximum of 30. The minimum of 15 are when you get a stable reading, but when you're analysing the really high efficient boilers, something like the Valent IQ, okay, with heat recovery on the back, so any boiler with heat recovery will have high CO readings right at the very beginning because they're incredibly efficient. So understanding our readings we're getting is the main thing we need to do, and not be shy to remember them and understand them. Okay, don't start panicking because you get high CO at the beginning, because you should be putting the probe in yet anyway. So I always look at doing the flue gas analysing at the end of a job rather than the beginning of the job. Okay, so let's put this into practice, let's see it working. So let's start using this analyzer. Now what we've got here is we've got the Ariston boiler. Our test points are at the top. There's a little screw that holds in there which I've already pulled off. Now we have two sample points. One which is on the left hand side, which is our analyzer out, so products combustion out, and the one on the right hand side is our flue integrity testing, which we'll look at in a minute, which is sampling the air coming in. Now the easiest way to tell them, if you just get your probe and slide it in, if it goes in about 150 mil, between 100 and 150 mil, that is your flue gas analyzer port. And if it only just about goes in, so maybe 30-40 mil, then that's your flue integrity port. Okay, so let's talk about the probe. Now the probe is 200 mil long. Now if I was to sample the flue from the outside, okay, so not from these sample points, from the actual terminal on the outside, I would use the full 200 mil into the flue way. That will stop you drawing air in, so always remember, if you're analysing from the outside, is always slide it in. But when you're analysing from this port on the inside, you want it set for about 150 mil, okay, because you don't want to be drawing all that water or that moisture into the analyzer unit. I know we have a bowl to stop that, and again we'll go through the bowl later, but we don't really want to start sucking all that moisture in. Okay, so the depth gauge is important, and it also makes a seal. So make sure you set it for about 150 mil. You then slide it in. There you go, that's fully in the sample point. Okay, now I've not got the boiler on full power, I've just got it running. It's actually on minimum setting according to the gauge at the front, because we've got the heating running. So this is doing our minimum setting. Now what I'm doing now on minimum, I'm just waiting for it to stabilise. So I could have up to 15 minutes waiting, but if I get a stable reading within the 15 minutes, then I can deem it okay. It's still changing. So at the moment we've got an O2 of 5.7, a CO of 8, and CO2 of 8.7, and a ratio of 0.0001. Okay, so we've got very low CO. We've got CO2, which is round about right, 8.6, and then the ratio is well in 0.000. There's 3 noughts and then 1. Okay, remember we could go down to 2 noughts full. Okay, so that doesn't seem to be altering. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the boiler into high fire. I'm going to leave the analyzer in there, and then let's see what happens. So basically, to get this boiler in high fire, I'm going to hold the reset button so it comes up to test, and I'm just going to use this turning dial now to put the tap symbol on, which will take it into maximum fire. And I can now see on the gauge it's got the full flame, so I know that's in maximum, and we should start seeing a difference. Now it takes, because of the length of the tube, it takes about 10 seconds, so you need to allow about 10 seconds when you're taking your second reading, just to allow the products of combustion to go through the tube, through the trap, and then into the actual analyzer. So don't be quick to adjust things, and if you are adjusting the zero governor, you've still got to do a little tiny turn and then wait at least 10 seconds, okay, before you start turning it again. So that's a little tip. If you do have to adjust these valves, just turn it a little tiny bit and wait 10 seconds, or at least 10 seconds, before you turn it again. Now you can see our oxygen reading is 5, our CO has shot up to 92, our CO2 is 9.1, and our ratio is 0.0010. Okay, we're still on maximum, but the figures are still changing. Okay, remember, 15 are stable reading. At the moment I'm getting a CO2 of 5.2, we're getting a CO of 87, and our CO2 is 9. Our ratio has now gone to 0.001. Okay, so you see, I didn't just automatically just took the reading, yeah, that's the one and that's it. Okay, you've got to leave it to stabilise. Now we've got a reading of O2 4.9, CO 97, CO2 9.1, and again the ratio of 0.0011 this time. And that seems now to be pretty stable. Okay, so that is what we've got on this appliance. So what we would do now is we would check our CO and our CO2 with the manufacturer if they give us those figures, or we're looking at the ratio to make sure it's less than 0.004. Okay, so far this boiler on minimum and maximum seems to be pretty good. The next test I'm going to be doing is the integrity test, so the flue integrity test. What this is going to do is it's going to tell me whether our seals are broken within the flue, okay, whether it's on the top of the turret, whether it's in the flue, or even whether the actual terminal is broken as well. So what I've got to do with this analyzer now is change the screen. So to change the screen, I press the on-off button once, twice, and it gives me this really fancy menu now, which has got my O2, my CO, my CO2, my ratio, my NOx air, my flue temperature, my efficiency. Okay, so it's giving me the full readings I require. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to slide that in to the right hand port now, not the left hand, the right hand port. I'm just going to leave it. I've got my settings on minimum, okay, and I'm just going to leave it again for 15 to 30 or whether I get a stable reading. Now the results we're looking for on this are our oxygen levels of greater than 20.6 or equal to or greater, and our CO2 levels of equal to or less than 0.2 and no ratio. Because if we've got a high CO2 and a ratio, that means our seals are probably gone. Okay, which is quite common on a condensing boiler nowadays. Now another way of checking whether your seals have gone is if you're inside your boilers full of water and rust, because that's, if it's rusty water and rusty casing, that's a good chance it is flue water, because it's acidic, where central heating water wouldn't be acidic. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm just leaving it again to stabilize. At the moment I've got an oxygen reading of 20.5, but I've got a CO reading of 4, I've got a CO2 of nothing, ratio of nothing, NOx air of nothing, flue temperature of 32 degrees, no efficiency, and a pressure of 0.48. Okay, so if I started taking that reading now, I would be panicking. Okay, but I can see already my CO has gone right the way down. My oxygen readings are 20.6, and this is why it's so important that we leave it for that time, because again it takes 10 seconds for it to clear. Okay, and you have to clear all the cells inside the analyzer, so don't be quick to take those readings. Okay, it's not a race. Our job's not a race. We don't all have to put a boiler in 20 minutes. You know, we can take all day, especially when you get to my age. Okay, so now I've got an O2 of 20.6, a CO of 3, well, it's just gone down to 20.5 now, and a CO of 3, and no CO2 at all, no ratio. Again, our CO's dropped down to 1, and again our oxygen level has gone up to 20.6. Okay, now I know there's nothing wrong with the flue system on this boiler, and my readings keep fluctuating between 20.5 and 20.6, but my CO is very low. I'm not really bothered about my CO readings. It's my CO2 readings I'm more worried about, which I'm not getting anything, and I'm not getting any ratios. So my oxygen levels are quite low. Now, because my oxygen level, well, it is 20.6 at the moment, is quite low, what I need to do is flue gas analyse through the window on the same wall of where this flue is. Okay, so I'm sampling the oxygen outside, because you might not have 20.6 oxygen outside. But because I've got a very low CO and I've got no CO2, then that's probably going to be an indication that we have got low oxygen O2 outside. And I know here where we are in the centre of Ashton, we always get between 20.4 and 20.5 oxygen. Always, summer, winter, whatever, we always get around about that reading. We're surrounded by flats, okay, all pumping out their CO and CO2, okay, from the condensing boilers. So I'm not worried by the results from this boiler. So that's flue integrity on low. We now need to do the flue integrity on high, so I'm going to put it on high again. So again, we're already in test menu. I'm just going to put it till the hot tap comes on. It's now going to go into full flame, and again I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to stand there staring like that, panicking, because what's the point? Okay, if you've got a poor reading, you'll get a poor reading in 5 minutes or 15 or 20. Yeah, if you've got a good reading, we need to wait that time. Patience. So now I'm on high straight away. I'm on 20.6. I'd be surprised if it does go above that, because we don't normally get above 20.6. We've got a CO of 1. We've got no CO2. We've got no ratio. We've got a flue temperature now of 31 degrees. And that's pretty much what we've got. We've now got no CO. So that's pretty much about as stable as we're going to get. Okay, 20.6, 0, can't ask for more than that. Okay, so we've got a pretty good stable reading now, and I know that's pretty much average we get here because this gets analysed all the time. So that's flue gas analysing the condensing boiler. Remember, if it's a non-condensing boiler, you would be looking for a ratio of 0.008. Non-condensing boilers weren't designed to be analysed. Flue gas analysing only came in because of condensing boilers. So you won't know what your CO is, won't know what your CO2 is, because the manufacturer will never have give you those readings. But you'll always find a non-condensing boiler, so say a balanced flue boiler, will give you very low CO readings because it's not that efficient. Okay, so you always get low, very low readings. So that's flue gas analysing the condensing combi boiler, or any condensing boiler. It doesn't have to be a combi, could be a regular or a system. Now we've finished doing our analysing, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the probe out. I'm going to come out of test mode because we don't need it in test mode now, and I'm going to move my analyser away from the boiler. I'm just going to stick it on this one, and I'm just going to hang the probe still with the pump running on the side of this boiler while I put my sample points back in. Now my sample points back in, let's bring back the analyser. So what I've done is I've left it on, and our oxygen reading now is reading 20.6. Our CO is 0, CO2 0, no ratio. But I want my oxygen levels to go up a little bit, because then I know I've completely cleared my sensor. Because when I turned it on, I had 20.9 oxygen. Okay. Now we are in a little bit of a confined space, and I have been rabbiting on, and I have been using up that oxygen. So I could actually take it back outside now to where I actually initially turned it on. Now once we're happy with the oxygen levels, okay, we know it's not contaminated now. I've got no CO, I've got no CO2, and I've got no ratio. Because the next test I'm going to do is I'm going to do a sweep test. And I'll explain what that is in a minute. First of all, I need to change my analyzer settings. So I need to press escape, and it says replace the inspection catch. I now need to come down on my menu using my down arrow to apply and sweep test. Okay, I now need to accept that. I've now got it running. So what it is now is I'm now going to test around the outside of the boiler. Okay, I'm going to test the turret, I'm going to test the sample point, I'm going to test the case seals of this boiler. Okay, and I'm looking for a CO reading of less than 10 parts per million. Now if I've got a CO of more than 3 parts per million, I might need to start investigating, because I could actually have left the test point off the top. Now when we do this with the trainees and we leave the test point off, we always get readings of round about 3-4 rather than 10, because obviously it's only a 2-minute test. We're not leaving it on long enough to get the air vitiated. So if you do get a reading of greater than 3 parts per million when you do your sweep test at the end, check your test point. Okay, so it's dead straightforward now. Still got the sample probe. All I've got to do is press the middle button, and I can now start sampling, or would start now analysing with this boiler in maximum setting. I start at the top, going around the flue, going around the turret, going around the sample point, going round the case seals of the boiler. So remember, this is a 2-minute test. Again, always remembering it takes 10 seconds for get from there to inside there. So we're going 1 minute and 17 seconds now, and with no readings. We've got no CO, we've got no readings whatsoever, so we've not actually got anything. Just round the sample point. Remember, hold it there for 10 seconds. You can even use the clock on the front. So when this gets to 2 minutes, it will tell me. Okay, so it's now got to 2 minutes, it's now told me. And again, wait that 10 seconds. Okay, I can now press the middle button and I can say it's passed. So we got nothing. We got no CO whatsoever coming into this room. So we can deem this safe. We've left it safe. Not a lot of engineers do the sweep test, but if I was you, I would do the sweep test as your last test, and you'll never ever forget to put the sample point on. Hopefully. That's a sweep test. Now that's the end of this first part on how to use the flue gas analyzer and understanding the readings. Now if you've liked this video, why don't you give us a thumbs up, because it shows you care, or leave a constructive comment down below. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, then subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, because we release videos every Wednesday. So all I've got left to say is thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and see you next Wednesday for part 2 on flueless space heaters. Cheers guys.